For years, people have been arguing over who the best NFL team is. Well, I'm going to tell you about the Dallas Cowboys, who I believe is the best team that there has ever been. If you want a winning tradition, they have that. You want great players? They've had plenty of them. You want drama? Well, they've had a few dramatic players in their time. But I mainly think I'll just tell you about the history of this amazing team. The Dallas Cowboys play in the Eastern Division of the National Football Conference of the National Football League. They play along with three other teams, the New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Washington Redskins. According to Inside the NFL, NFC East, the Cowboys entered the league in 1960 and lost the first 10 games that they played. They didn't even win a game until their second season, and they didn't win as many games as they lost until their sixth season in 1966, where they made it to the NFL Championship game and lost to the Green Bay Packers 34-27. They had some tough times those first 6 years, but they got some good players in their first draft in 1961, and their owner, Clint Murchison Jr., and their general manager, Tex Schramm, knew they had everything they needed for a great team. They even signed head coach Tom Landry to a 10-year extension after 3 consecutive losing seasons, something that would never happen in sports today. In an autobiography of Tom Landry, it talked about how Tex Schramm knew the importance of TV marketing and advertising. It's something the Cowboys are still big on today, as they are the most valued team in terms of money value today. Tex was also the first to bring about the idea of instant replay, which is used in all sports today. After 6 straight losing seasons, the Cowboys set an NFL record by having 20 consecutive winning seasons, a record which still holds up today, in which they only missed the playoffs twice. They were one of the top teams by the end of the 60s and won their first Super Bowl in 1971, where they defeated the Miami Dolphins 24-3. During the 70s, the Cowboys continued to earn national attention and were beginning to be recognized as an elite team. They understood the importance of marketing and had the tradition of playing every Thanksgiving and having it being broadcast over TV all over the country, which is something that they still do today. With everything they were doing in the 70s, it was no surprise that they were known as a glamour team. They were more interested in marketing and merchandising the team than actually winning. Although they might not have been the most successful in terms of Super Bowl winning, whereas the Pittsburgh Steelers won either 3 or 4 Super Bowls during the 70s, the Cowboys still might have been the most liked team throughout the nation. And as they continued to win games year after year, they were dubbed America's Team in 1978, a title which still holds true today. Throughout the 70s, the Cowboys had been led by the great Roger Staubach, who is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And in the year 1979, he retired. But although the Cowboys did not have him, they would have to move on. And to start the 1980s, they had 2 great seasons, and in 1981, they looked like they might once again be heading to the Super Bowl, until Joe Montana led the 49ers on a last-minute touchdown drive to win the game and beat the Cowboys, which kicked them out of the playoffs. The Cowboys continued their winning success for several more years, and until 1986, they ended their 20 consecutive winning season streak by finishing 7-9. The Cowboys weren't able to get back to their old self and didn't have a winning season for the rest of the 80s. They drafted Michael Irvin in 1988, and in 1989, Jerry Jones became the new owner of the Dallas Cowboys. The first thing he did as owner was to fire Tom Landry, the guy who had been the head coach of the Cowboys since they first became a team almost 30 years before. Jones got a lot of criticism for this move, even though Landry admitted that he wasn't as sharp as when he was younger. Jones then hired Jimmy Johnson as the new head coach. They drafted Troy Aikman, who ended up being one of the greatest quarterbacks in Cowboy history, and also traded off Herschel Walker, who was one of the best running backs in the league at the time. People thought that was a dumb move of them to do, but it actually helped them out in the long run by giving them a whole bunch of draft picks and a lot of good players, because the Vikings were quite stupid and gave them a lot for a guy who didn't help them at all.
Amen.
The team only won 1 game that year, which was their worst record since their first year in the league. Things didn't look good for them ending the 80s. And then they began the 90s then by again ending as the worst team in the league. But they were able to get some good draft picks, and the next year they were finally able to make the playoffs. In 1992, they got back to the Super Bowl where they defeated the Buffalo Bills 52-17. in quite a blowout which only an amazing team would be able to accomplish. They regained their spot as an elite team, and they went on to win the Super Bowl the next year, once again defeating the Bills. Jimmy Johnson shocked everybody by resigning after that year, after a lot of controversy with him and Jerry Jones, and Barry Switzer then became the new head coach. The Cowboys gained their third Super Bowl of the decade in 1995, but after that, things began to fall apart. They continued to grab several winning seasons to end the 90s, but other than that, the only good thing that had going for them was the running back Emmitt Smith, wide receiver Michael Irvin, and quarterback Troy Aikman, who were among the league's best. And in 2000, Troy Aikman retired from the team, and a year after, Michael Irvin had a career-ending neck injury. The Cowboys weren't able to bring back another winning season until 2003, when they were finally able to make it back to the playoffs. And in the 9 years since then, the Cowboys have struggled being consistent. They would have some years where they would looking like they would have something going on, but then would lose in the first game of the playoffs, and other years where they would fail to do anything at all. The past few years have been up and down for them, as the defense has never been consistent, especially in their terrible pass coverage, and the offense keeps suffering injuries to key starters. They have a lot of the pieces, but now they just have to complete the puzzle. I've been a fan of the Cowboys almost my whole life. I started as a Vikings fan before I became smart enough to make my own decisions and to start cheering for a team which is second in the most Super Bowls won in NFL history, as well as having numerous Hall of Fame players. If you're looking for that special team to cheer for, let me suggest America's team, the Dallas Cowboys.